So welcome to this very brief video on social constructive meta-ethnography. And what I want to go through today is a methodological walkover of the approach. Essentially answering the question, what do you need to write in your method section for a social constructivist meta-ethnography? Um, I think that's important because I think you could potentially deal with lots of different situations uh, with what comes out of a social constructivist meta-ethnography. And so what we have here in the shared screen is a potential methods section. And on the left, we have a diagram of the core processes of meta-ethnography. We've also got today the framework article as a reference point and the first example of the social constructive meta-ethnography worked example. So that's there too. But let's keep it on that page now and just keep on the right hand side of the screen looking at what you might need to put in your method section. So first thing obviously is you're following the framework, and that framework has 5 phases. The framework will be supported by Prisma for search and maybe Prisma S. You could also think about qualitative articles that support the search process and articles that help you understand how to search for qualitative information that would be recommended. And then you're going to report according to the Prisma 2020 flow diagram. So that's all integral in there. In terms of what you write up next, then I would probably think about the phases that have gone through. So if you've identified the area you're interested in initially or the initial focus of that in the introduction, then a follow through here is appropriate to consider what that area is. And then some sort of justification of that is needed first. And then I would look to identify what is relevant in quite a traditional way. That includes eligibility criteria, search, extraction, and quality appraisal, noting that quality appraisal is slightly different, ask slightly different questions, and you can tabularize those questions. So again, come back to the framework article for that. Eligibility criteria for what studies you want to include would be based on SPIDER or an appropriate qualitative acronym. So we've got sample, phenomenon of interest, design, evaluation, research type. So we're thinking about what is the focus initially for you. The initial search strategy and the extraction as you would do. And again, you can look at other documents around how to do this for reviewing. I would always encourage that and be sensitive to qualitative information. Where this process starts to deviate from other types of thematic synthesis or the traditional meta-ethnography is that we're starting to bring in then, once we've got these articles and once we think about what we can do with the results of the articles, we're bringing in this idea of coding and sort of mirroring social constructivist terminology and process. So what we've got there is this initial line by line coding. And when we say that, what we're saying is stay close to the original data. That maybe it's the words that are used by the authors or the participant quotes. Maybe it's a summary word that identifies an inference you've made. Maybe it's a word that links to past knowledge that you've had of the literature or theory of any knowledge that might relate to this. I think can be used as a code to help you make sense of what's going on. So we got to think we've got multiple studies, multiple result sections, and we're pulling out information from those results, potentially discussion sections to help us understand and code the content here and to give our interpretation of it based on what we know and understand. Now, once that's done, you're going to get to a time where you can identify and prioritize the most frequent or significant codes, ones which may come up more often. And then there's this process within that where you're thinking about maybe abstract codes and abstract categories and transforming the data. And I think within that, you might start asking yourself questions of how do they link together? What's going on here? What's being shown? Is there a process and an outcome? What is the outcome? What is the process? Are there key stages of the process? Does that always occur? Are there conditions when it doesn't occur? So our mindset right now is thinking about after the coding, how do things link together? What's going on? And uh, how can we interrogate that in a iterative, dynamic process? So you're thinking about associations between codes that you may have made, and thoughts, actions, or behaviors you may have uh, viewed. You may be thinking about when this occurs, how it occurs, why it occurs, and describing that. So the process, I would say, involves a lot of background work, idea generation, different qualitative synthesis te techniques in terms of spider diagrams, tabulation, um, idea charts. That's how I would probably start to interrogate it. Um, and that really it should bring you down to some key processes, areas, models, uh, processes and outcomes, and hopefully that's then refined down to maybe one you want to focus on, or there might be a few you want to interrogate. Uh, the whole point of what we're trying to get to is something which is core category or a substantive theory is the end point. So we want to get these ideas, test them, and analyze them with that in mind. That's where we're ending up. So what you can see on the left, if we just draw ourselves to attention on the left, this iterative process of idea generation. Okay, so that's where we're going to start going. We need to test these ideas. We need to test connections that we've made. Um, and as we're doing that, and alongside that, we've got specific keywords that you can go and look up, and you'll find these in good Chalmersian texts around social constructivist grounded theory, things like memos, questions, theoretical sensitivity, sensitizing questions, critical inquiry, methodological self-consciousness. So all of those aspects you might want to think, how can I apply this? Where can I apply this? How is this reflected within what I'm doing? And again, that needs to be considered and documented. The, the next phase is and is sort of interlinked with the last phase because when we generate an idea, we need to test that idea. And what you can see is this identification of idea, challenge of idea, considering alternative explanations and decide whether that could be used or not as a process. And then there's three methods which help consider that. Um, and these methods are listed here, okay? So are there any other source of information required? Do you need to undertake further search or extraction? Can you method two, can you consider specific processes like theoretical saturation, constant comparison, theoretical sampling, constant reflexivity? Again, these terms, like the terms up here, are very specific to the social constructivist grounded theory approach and help develop a good substantive theory. Within this as well, within this process, well, it wasn't certainly for our first example a case of just finding one set of studies and then moving on. We found that we needed to investigate concepts and we had to search for other types of studies. So if we look at our example, which is around uncertainty, hope, pain, emotional regulation, all these concepts came up and became infused in the model, the resultant model. So there's multiple searches. We had to report that. So again, what I'll do is I'll point you towards this article to further understand how that works, how it looks, and how a method section might be written up to reflect that. In this one, we've got three Prisma diagrams. We've done additional searching of concepts. We've documented that. So it's an idea. It's certainly not the most perfect or refined process currently, but you can see there we've got the protocol registration in, eligibility criteria, initial focus, then how that followed through and followed down of these other processes. So to write your method section, look at the example, look at the framework article and think about what's here. And that should help you with your steps on social constructivist meta-ethnography method section. Good luck with it.